Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of the Jams D Podcast 1991 Retrospective. Yeah, that's right. It's back. We're back, baby, talking about important cultural milestones that came out in the year 1991 during 30 this year. And we have returned to talk about 10 by Pearl Jam. This is technically also going to be a bit of a sequel to an episode we've already done where we covered Temple of the Dog, which is a project that happened between the release, or not between the release. It happened as a collaboration between members of Soundgarden and members of Pearl Jam. So there's a little bit of cultural and historical musical context there that you may want to check out a little bit. It's a good episode. Go check it out. Come right back here. And now we're going to talk about Pearl Jam's 10. And Morgan, as the Pearl Jam boy, please enlighten us. What the fuck do 10 even be?
So, I'm not going to rehash everything in the Temple of the Dog video. But basically what I will say is that the remnants of Mother Love Bone got together a few new dudes from the Seattle scene and recruited Eddie Vedder, who was living in San Diego at the time, and they formed Pearl Jam and basically immediately started production and recording and writing on Pearl Jam's debut album 10, which subsequently fucking exploded. One of the biggest records of all time.
Maybe notable to mention that a lot of its notoriety and like acclaim and like popularity came kind of after the fact. Like it was not really until like 92 when this album really started blowing up. And I think a lot of it was Pearl Jam gaining a lot of notoriety as a live act. And you had the music video for Evenflow, which was like focused around like showcasing that aspect of who they were. And so these kind of things went hand in hand, and they were kind of like word of mouth spread in a way that was different to like Nevermind, which was kind of like an instant hit on impact. 10 like had to simmer a bit and then benefited from the wave of interest in grunge that Nevermind brought.
And also the Jeremy video, which was put out at a somewhat later date, and that was absolutely huge on MTV as well.
True.
I figure, unless anybody else has anything introductory to say, there's not much point in pussyfooting around. Most people clicking on this know what Pearl Jam's 10 is. Most people who are clicking on this have probably heard it as many times as I have.
People who don't click on this know what the deal with Pearl. My mom introduced me to Pearl Jam with Pearl Jam's 10 on CD in her car.
As did mine, almost exact same story. She saw that I was getting into Green Day and was like, hey, you would probably like this shit. And then I was a different person.
The Green Day to Pearl Jam pipeline?
One thing...
Early 90s.
Yeah. I was introduced to Pearl Jam by my first girlfriend, so...
There's a Pearl Jam to Weezer pipeline.
There is.
So
weirdly enough. So probably first thing worth mentioning, even before we go into the songs, is just the personnel on board. I mean, if you've heard it, you'll probably be familiar with Pearl Jam, but it's worth shouting out by name. The members of this band whose individual contributions we'll be returning to as we discuss the songs. Obviously, Eddie Vedder, who is one of the most, I won't say greatest because that's always a limiting thing to call someone anyway, but one of the most impactful and unique and powerful vocalists of his era. An absolutely commanding force who we already shouted out for his star turn on that one Temple of the Dog song that he appeared on, that massive track on that record. But obviously he gets center stage here, and his band as the front man and also as the principal songwriter. Probably the sole songwriter. I'm not 100% sure there, but I
think Stone Gossard is credited with a couple of songwriting co-credits, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely, there's always been a spirit of collaboration, or at least that is the impression that they give off.
Well, one thing I bring that up, the reason why I emphasize Vedder as a songwriter is that with this record in particular, there's a very personal aspect to a number of songs on this album that is very tied up with experiences and life that Eddie Vedder has lived. And so we'll get into that when we talk about the individual songs. But obviously he is key. Probably the second most important member is Mike McCready, the lead guitarist, who you will remember from Temple of the Dog. And of course, you have rhythm guitarist Stone Gossard as well, bassist Jeff Ament. And
it's important that we do note that, like, I would say that the two most important members of this band are actually Eddie and Stone. Stone is never as flashy as McCready, but as a guy who is in Green River and then in Mother Love Bone with Jeff Ament, absolutely integral to what this band is. And if he were gone, it would be fundamentally different.
Yeah,
in heaps and heaps of ways.
No, absolutely true. So yeah, Mike, Eddie, Stone, Jeff, names you should all know, and Dave Cruson, the band's drummer in this era as well, a very big part of the impact of the music on this record too. Yes. So yeah, and production from Rick Parashar, who is I'm not sure if this is a person who is known for producing classics. Also produced Blind Melon's first album, The Temple of the Dog record, and Alice in Chains' Dirt, specifically the song Wood on that record. So
yeah, he must have just been a big Seattle guy at the time.
Yeah, but ended up a bit washed and later in his career producing such classics as Nickelback's Silver Side Up.
Well, I mean, fucking Butch Vig.
3 Doors Down, Away from the Sun. Let's not go there. Bon Jovi's Have a Nice Day.
Okay.
An important detail I think we should also mention here is that much like our Radiohead retrospective, we do have 3 longtime veteran fans of Pearl Jam's 10 here on the podcast, but August is a relative newcomer to this music. And only, I believe, heard Pearl Jam's 10 comparatively rather recently. So we get a fresh perspective as well.
Yeah, I think it was after we did Temple of the Dog that he first heard it. Is that?
Yeah. So that'll be a valuable perspective to have on this. But yeah, names we've established, people who should all know, we'll be referring to their contributions as we discuss these songs. Morgan, lead us in.
All right. So track 1 on Pearl Jam's 10, titled Once, opens with what the band refers to as the Mama Son instrumental, a name which has a hell of a lot of resonance with a lot of the themes on the album and some of its B-sides.
I did not know that.
Yep. It appears at the end of the album after the song release ends as well, and creates a sort of perfect loop of an album in that way.
Yeah, he called it a mini rock opera, I think, of a series of specific songs on this record, and one song that isn't on the record itself.
Yeah, that's definitely right away. I think Vedder's biggest influence from a songwriting perspective is The Who, and that's seen pretty immediately with this sort of sweet mini rock opera, as he referred to it. That said, this this instrumental opening lasts about 40 seconds before the song becomes the hardest shit you've ever heard in your life.
I mean, it's borderline heavy metal.
Oh yeah. The grunge scene inherently is so indebted to stuff like Black Sabbath and doom metal and even shit like Metallica, and that's seen pretty clearly on a song like Once, which just is absolutely blistering, and Vedder immediately shows how much range he can cover, not even vocally, but just as a performer, in comparison to something like Hunger Strike, where he is fully, in an almost acting method, fully embodying the protagonist of this song, who is quite literally going postal.
Those screams he's got when it's like, it's like, they sound like he is in pain.
Yeah, it's one of the most incredible ways to start an album that I have ever heard.
It's worth noting with regard to that mini rock opera thing that the songs in question are this song, Alive, and Footsteps, which is the B-side to Jeremy, one of the 2 B-sides to Jeremy. And what's actually interesting about this is that Once comes after Alive in terms of the sequence of the story. So it's a story about a semi-autobiographical story about a son who discovers his father is actually not his father, but his stepfather, and his real father is actually long dead. And then there's this weird thing about a kind of Oedipal relationship between his mother and him. But anyway, the actual
part's not biographical.
No, it should be noted.
Yeah.
But anyway, like Alive, as we'll talk about, is very much the kind of crux of this narrative. And then Once is more of a response to the revelation that is detailed in Alive, where this song essentially gives Vedder an opportunity to cathartically express his frustration and anger and pain in through this fantasy of absolutely cutting loose. And in his words, I got a bomb in my temple that's going to explode. I got a 16 gauge buried under my clothes. And he's just, as Morgan says, going postal. And I love the way that it has this perspective of like the lyric "Once upon a time I could control myself" is like you were immediately put into this position of like, this character isn't losing control. This character has lost control. And you're coming into it in medias res, I guess, or like in the middle of the story, and kind of catch up with what's happened. And you don't quite know what's happened, but you just know that you've walked in the middle of this like fucking intense explosion of emotion. And that's a killer way to open the record. Amazing track.
It's also immediately clear that the guitar work on this album is absolutely top shelf. Even not even the solo on the song, which is fucking amazing, but the lead, just the lead melody is like, I've tried to learn it and like I've gotten to a point where I can play it, but if I don't keep practicing it, I will forget the exact rhythm of it. It's that weird and sort of unconventional. It's really impressive and really exciting to listen to, as well as being just menacing as all fucking get out.
Yeah, that's another thing that really strikes me every time I listen to this record is how like consummately professional it sounds. Not in terms of the production, which is another thing we can get to, but just in terms of like the raw technical power and prowess of the musicians. And I think it was in the Pearl Jam 20 documentary, there was, or it might have been in something else I saw, there was like a commentary of how the Seattle scene was unique, or like the technicality that a lot of the bands in the Seattle scene had, this kind of real, from the gate of their first album, this kind of real like technical skill came from the fact that a lot of these bands cut their teeth as bands in the live scene and had to play show after show after show after show before they could even make a record, before they could even think about being able to put music to tape. And so they were evolving through the scene where whether or not you get a label deal and make an album depends on how good of a live band you are, depends on how much attention you're able to get and whether you're able to wow people or not. And so you get a lot of these astonishing debuts in this era because of the raw hours that's put into honing your performance as musicians. And of course, the smaller bands that a lot of these people cut their teeth on before building up to this project. It's like, this is the debut work of Pearl Jam for sure, but all of these musicians are by this point expert and well experienced and have honed their skill to an extraordinary degree. And so that gives this remarkable clarity and power and efficiency and ferocity to the performances here that's so consummate and well-rounded that it becomes like so surprising this is a debut album because of that.
And they were scene veterans by this point. They were almost like the old guard of what was going on at Seattle at that point. Like everybody knew them and they knew everyone, because they had just been around, whether it was in Green River or Shadow or Mother Love Bone. Everybody except Eddie, who had been living in San Diego and I think a variety of other places up till that point. But even he took to it pretty immediately, despite his relative shyness. just once he got on stage, he was accepted.
What do you think, August?
Tell me, how many bands, how many shitty, derivative, post-grunge, new metal bands have made a song like Once and completely failed to capture any of the emotional appeal or technicality this song has? Because this is a fantastic opener. I think this kind of subject of, losing control has been so exploited and diminished over the years following this album's release and the advent of grunge that when you sit down and really listen to this song and pay attention, the vocal thrashing Eddie delivers is just astounding. The absolute, just the ferocity of the guitar, that intro is such a brilliant choice, giving you kind of this breath, this kind of inhale, and the album following is the exhale, this carrying of the forward momentum that I think is just absolutely astounding. It's an electrifying opener. It really shows you, because this song does describe just losing control of one's emotions, one's physical state in a really, in like a genuine way, which I think is what makes it so impactful. Just having lost control already, that middle ground for you doesn't exist when you start off this album. I think it's a brilliant choice. So I love this opener.
Yeah.
Fucking love this hook, man. The really raw path, just the once.
He sounds so
upon a
pained.
time.
It sounds so pained whenever he says once. Like you can feel that.
yeah.
It's the little break in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once
You can't.
upon a time.
I mean, if that's something, if you want to do an impression of it, you got to put your whole fucking pussy into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with fucking him in general, is that Eddie is a vocalist, like, honest to God, I'd actually compare him to James Hetfield in the sense that, like, he gets memed after a certain point of being, like, highly impressionable and, like, on a surface level, if you go to, like, some of the, maybe some of the material is maybe not the man's best, and then you kind of isolate it and just be like, oh, this fucking guy sounds fucking goofy, but it's just like, I really think people just simply do not recognize the amount of technical talent that he has. And it's kind of overshadowed by how impressionable it is. And like, I won't pretend like it's not kind of a bar for entry with Pearl Jam, but like, I feel like this is why everyone should start with 10, not because it's a great album to get you into the band, which it is, but because this is the perfect showcase that I feel like this will get you on board with him as a performer for the rest of their career.
And there's also a reason that both Hetfield and Vedder have been memed to death, and that reason is that they both changed the face of rock music forever.
They're
afterwards.
both like so unashamedly like fully in their bag as well. Like I think I think, to be fair, a lot of them, if there's memeing of Vedder, I'm sure it all mostly comes from a loving place and like a kind of affectionate place. But like I think of a song like Yellow Leadbetter, for instance, where he's famously like not even clearly enunciating. He's just kind of like making noises. And it's like the fucking most it's the most powerful shit in the world. I think even Stephen Hayden, who's will gladly say that Pearl Jam is one of his 3 favorite bands of all time, has said that if in some ways Vedder is the most powerful when he's not even like saying words, when he's just fucking vocalizing, because it like gives off this impression that like he's going somewhere beyond language. And like you have to be a very specific kind of vocalist to be able to pull that shit off without just sounding like, what the fuck are you in there? What are you doing, man? But he does it. There's moments on this record where he does it. We'll get to. I mean, Once I think is definitely a great opener in the sense that you can hear what he's saying and you're immersed in the story immediately. But there are moments on this record later on down the track, especially, where he gets into this more soulful kind of like grieving tone that it melts my butter.
I feel like that is a great That's a great lead into Evenflow, which is a song that features his vocal delivery of just the sort of the tonality of the verses of here just being like
Oh, look,
and it's
the amount of times
fucking
I can't
It's
tell
the
you.
Sandler.
I can't tell you the amount of times, and I've been looking forward to this for one very selfish reason, which is that as a teenager, I would do Eddie Vedder impressions a lot, and I fully intend to do some today because those vocals are so iconic that it's so hard not to just like this is an album where I would be in the TV room fucking rocking out and air guitar solo and going rests his head on a pillow made of concrete. And
Yeah.
all right. And then
Evenflow, I flow like butterflies. And the song fucking owns.
It really cannot be underestimated how this song in particular, maybe even more than Smells Like Teen Spirit, I think, was such a herald of where rock music would go afterwards. Because you could definitely recognize the traces of the cock rock that would follow this. Just the big dumb fucking riffy Muses psycho bullshit.
I mean, you can even hear what you listen to this and you're like, oh, so this is what Axl Rose is trying and failing to do.
Yeah.
Like you can hear a bit of that. I mean, it's so ironic that this came out the same month as Use Your Illusion.
I want to know if you guys who've heard this, who've definitely heard it more than I have, even though I've heard it 100 fucking times. There's like a noise that Eddie makes like 2/3 of the way through this song where he just goes like, and it fucking sends me because it's just like he is literally just so into it. I think he just did that and I could imagine like everybody in the band being like,
oh yeah, I mean like the fucking part at before the end lead out little solo he does where he goes, yeah, mama. It's amazing. It's the most hype shit that I've ever heard.
My favorite part of the whole song was just before the main solo where he's just like, fuck it up. Like he's just going to
oh god,
just says to Mike, fuck it up. And it's like,
so
dude,
good.
That's so good.
And he does.
I don't even, what more needs to be said?
Yeah,
that
and
song,
what's also
honestly.
like we're talking about how all this kind of like joyous nutso verve of this performance, and this is a fucking devastating song, really.
Oh yeah,
Every
hideous
song
guitar.
on here, like some of them are definitely more appropriately attuned to their emotional tone, but like just like this it goes for all of grunge as a whole. Like I mean, I'm sure we'll get into that with Soundgarden, but like when you look at the lyrics, this is bleak. Like there's no other word for it. This is a dark fucking album.
So this song is a song specifically about a homeless person. I don't know if it's based on a true story or whether it's just something that Eddie has conjured up. I mean, probably is based on reality to a certain extent. And so there's this depiction of this existence, and it's very like personalized. Like it's very much about like the perception and the reality of this homeless person and what they're going through, not about like looking down from above. And the most devastating line for me is like, dark grin, he can't help when he's happy, he looks insane. Like that shit's like tragic. Like fuck. Like yeah, imagine that, like you're seen in this kind of, you're disregarded and you're seen in this kind of like really patronizing way purely for expressing happiness. Like Jesus, that's rough. And yeah, and then that refrain, the fact that the chorus refrain is thoughts arrive like butterflies, he don't know, so he chases them away. Like that sense of just living in a transient state and being, I guess, kind of terrified of thinking about any of it for any amount of time because you'll go insane. But also like not being naive either. Like as Eddie says, he understands the weather of the winter is on its way, like the threat of imminent death, but it's just a song about survival. and it's just gut wrenching, but also like hard as hell. And it's
Dude,
not
praying now to something that has never showed him anything. What a lyric. Oh
man.
my god.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what it comes down to is that Eder,
Oh,
Eder. Eder.
shut up. Let me get through this. What it comes down to is the fact that Vedder is simply just a very gifted storyteller in the way that like someone like John Prine is. It's just suited to like this mixture of metal and like Mother Love Bone style glam rock throughout this entire album. That it's just the combination shouldn't make sense, but it does, and it's fucking
gnarly, man.
Yeah, the storytelling is just absolutely peerless.
Just fucking Big Lebowski and the Carlson of CCR. Fucking
this will forever be a in the living room air guitaring when I'm 15 years old and watching MTV play the music video. Yeah, I know that when we think about the commercial outreach of this record, we think of the Jeremy video, but I think it's important to remember that the Evenflow video came earlier and was, if not as lasting in the public consciousness at the time, from what I can gather anyway. I mean, it's of course important in context that we're all coming at this being people that were born long after this album came out, but from what we can gather about the context of the time, it was this video and the showcasing of their live performance. And Stephen Hyden's words, you watched this video and there was no one in the world who watched this video and didn't immediately want to go and see Pearl Jam live. And that was the power of it, right? They're able to generate this buzz and this hype purely from their ballistic nature and the way they're able to showcase that.
And something that's worth noting is that like this was maybe Pearl Jam was maybe like the second big concert that I ever saw, and they are exactly the same. It's the same. Nothing has changed. They went up there, they played for 3 hours, they left their everything on the stage. Amazing. And oh god,
unreal.
I think this is a track for me where what stands out is the drumming on this song. I love that little drum fill at the intro, which like kicks off the track and gets it moving. I think this is the song where I love the drumming, and I love that I just have to appreciate Stone Gossard as the kind of main person who writes a lot of the music on this album, because these solos here are so memorable and catchy. I love that aspect.
That's the thing about it, is those solos are McCready, but the backbone, like the main riff and melody, is all Stone. And like the fact that they're so perfectly meshed is like
wow,
what really makes it, even when just one element on its own would be mesmerizing in of itself.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting on that note of the drumming, August, that this is just a note, fun fact that I've picked up from the internet, is that though most of this album was recorded very quickly, Evenflow took between 50 and 100 takes to get right, because Cruson, the drummer, was really struggling to keep up with and the intensity of the song and the performances and the crazy nature of it, and he was going too fast at certain points, I think. So
that's the thing, is they play it fast as shit live. Because Cameron is Matt Cameron is like, well, that's why he's Pearl Jam's drummer to me, even though he came in about halfway through, is that he just fits in so perfectly and immediately with a song like Evenflow, and just does not literally miss a beat. But props to Cruisin', especially on something like Why Go, where he creates just the like immediately iconic drum intro. Yeah, so no shade at him at all.
So true. All right then. Well, that leads us to there's classic after classic on this record, and
no, like it's worth mentioning that we're 3 songs in and we have a better hit rate than like 98% of whole albums.
Yeah. I mean, The hit when I don't think this is quite the most perfect grunge record, although it's very close. But when it hits, it's like it's the most perfect. It's the peak of the form, and it is the peak of the form like the vast majority of the time. And Alive is it is a transcendent song. It is obviously, again, as I alluded to earlier, the crux of the narrative of the mama son rock opera mini thing that's happening, and it is obviously also a very personal song for Vita, reflecting on his lack of relationship with his father and the betrayal of not knowing what happened to his father until a certain stage of his life when it was too late to fully reconcile, and he had been lied to. And I want to take a quote here from Eddie Vedder in an interview with Cameron Crowe shortly after the album came out. He said, "Everybody writes about it like it's a life affirmation thing. I'm really glad about that. It's a great interpretation. But Alive for me is torture. The story of the song is that a mother is with a father and the father dies. It's an intense thing because the son looks just like the father. The son grows up to be the father, the person that she lost. His father is dead, and now this confusion, his mother, his love. How does he love her? How does she love him? So what does he do? He goes out killing people, and that was once. He becomes a serial killer. And then in Footsteps, the final song of the trilogy, is when he gets executed." And so Alive is this song that is literally alive with some of the most intense and excessive emotion of any Pearl Jam song. And it's utterly overwhelming to listen to.
It's very weird to hear people say like it's affirming, because like I think again this is an album laden with terrific fucking lyrics, but in a song that says "You're still alive," she said, "Do I deserve to be? Is that the question? And if so, who answers?"
Who answers? Who answers?
But like that's the thing about it, is that like that does sound affirming, especially when you hear it live and the fucking solo comes in later, and it just, you're like, this is euphoric. This is the only time I have felt euphoria. So I get that interpretation, even if it doesn't exactly align with the literal text of the song. Just the instrumental is so excellent at actually portraying that.
And also, like, goated guitar solo.
Oh my god.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it seems almost redundant to say, like, this is one of the best Pearl Jam guitar solos. It's one of the best guitar solos of this era of rock music. It is utterly
one of the best guitar solos of all time. It's
yeah,
like,
I
it's
mean,
not even...
it's comfortably numb level good, right? It's that fucking level of like flashiness, showmanship, but also like pure emotion carved into this very melodic sensibility that it has, while still just totally going crazy and working as this like classic thing of where, like, I don't remember who said it, but it was like one classic rock legend said like a good guitar solo should come in where words fail, and that's exactly what it does here at the song at the climax, when he's just kind of fucking gibberish, and then McCready comes in and is like, fuck him up, just
As we've kind of discussed in this series in general, another one of these very classic sounding, just immediately classic feeling songs, even if you're listening to it for the first time, which was certainly my experience with this, in the same way it was my experience with a song like No Surprises by Radiohead, where that dissonance in terms of what's being said and what's being performed and presented to you just adds such a weight to this that I think is so immediately impactful and so beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. And like again, it never loses sight of the sheer charisma as well. Like I can't tell you how many times I've just kind of like again done that living room thing, just standing there going, "Why I can't remember when. Remember to this very day."
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
what
the
you
good
thought was your daddy?
Ah, yeah, my favorite part of the fucking Pearl Jam opera.
Sorry you didn't see him, but I'm glad we talked. Like the fucking vocal melodies are so weird and strange, like and going all over the shop, and yet it works so well. Ugh,
We have to get at our
Yeah.
silliness because the next song we're going to talk about is Why Go.
why go?
Which just fucking what a yeah. You know, just fucking
Why go home? Why go home?
he says here's a little fucking the man is unchained and you're off the fucking chain.
Dude, the guitar solo in this.
And but like the drum intro and then the bass is notable all over this album and on this song particularly because it's actually an 8-string bass which lends this particularly huge sound to the intro, or not intro, but the opening sort of bass line to Why Go and Jeremy. Just really sort of melodic, mixed with that really heavy low end that characterizes so much of this album, even aside from the fact that the bass lines themselves, even if they were on a standard 4-string, would be immense by themselves. It lends so much gravitas to each song that it appears on. And Why Go is just such a fucking barn burner.
This is like
diagnosed by some stupid fuck.
I love that delivery of that line.
Well, it's because he's fucking pissed. Like he's like, it sounds like he's actually pissed, as if like he didn't write the song and he's like actually like angry at the situation.
like
which
he's
I actually
reading-
like.
It's like he's reading the newspaper about this out loud
Yes.
and like just progressively getting more upset.
Yeah.
Being on Twitter feel like.
Oh
Yeah.
god.
You know what? The best thing I'll say about the song is that I completely wholeheartedly agree with everything that's been said, and it's probably one of my lowest ranked songs on this record.
Yeah,
So-
mine too.
So, you know,
I mean,
take it with a grain of salt.
I was gonna say this album's so good that I'm actually that way with Alive, where I'm just like, yeah, it's probably lower half for me, but like, look at what's on here, man.
It just renders the whole exercise meaningless. Great song.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
Great song.
Why Go might want to mention that it's the story of a girl who is locked in a mental institution for 2 years, and again, just almost cartoonishly dark in how it's just like the sentiment of the song, as expressed in the title, is literally it's just like, even if you get better, why return to the place because of the people that put you in the place that you find yourself
Like-
in? It's like there's such a futility there that's just like, you know what?
Yeah.
Making a
It-
point.
It adds a really interesting spin to a kind of sort of topic that doesn't necessarily like take things in this direction, like a song about like being abused that is essentially about institutionalization and the impact of that, like the fact that it conditions you to rely upon and take comfort in your institutionalization as opposed to freedom. And it's it's rough shit, and it's essentially like it's essentially like a throwaway song in between two absolute mammoths, and yet it has this emotional depth to it that is just astounding for what it is.
The storytelling across this record is just so universally good at being so defined and interesting from song to song in like, yeah, this really classic rock way, as Morgan already emphasized, with the evident who influence upon Vetter's songwriting. But yeah, this I feel, yeah, I'm kind of in a lot of the same places with you guys, where I still really like this song, but it's also just in between Alive and Black.
Oh,
Yeah.
fuck. Here we go.
Yeah.
I don't even.
This is like when Tyler during the Kid A episode was just like, and now the best Radiohead song. Not that I'm saying this is the best Pearl Jam song, but this is the song that deserves to be talked about with that kind of gravitas and weight.
I think, to be fair, it has developed that reputation despite not being a single. There's this famous story that the label basically begged the band to make this a single, but Vedder refused because he didn't want, I guess, the feeling or the meaning of the song to get lost in a commercialization of it. And obviously that's evident when you listen to it. But yet, regardless, despite the fact that it wasn't a single, it has still become one of the most enduring and most played songs on this whole album on rock radio. Like, I can't tell you the amount of times where I've been in the shittiest environment, surrounded by the worst people in the world, listening to rock radio, and then Black comes on, and it's like this incredible.
I have to leave. I'm gonna cry in front of these people. I have to leave.
And I don't even like them.
Yeah,
I hate them.
Yeah, I used to work for a summer. I worked in a butchery, and they always had the rock radio on, and Black came on once, and I literally just like I dissociated while I was on this like processing machine, like packing up meat, and I just dissociated while I was working and listening to this song, and it's
just look down, you split your hand in half, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah, I wouldn't have noticed. It's the surreal experience of having to listen to this absolutely heart-shredding song while, just in this absolutely desolate environment, surrounded by, just shit people. But anyway, this was for a long time my favorite Pearl Jam song as well, and it's very somewhat recently been overtaken, which is a crazy thing to say considering that I think this is as perfect as music gets. And it's a great true testament to, if it weren't clear by now how emotionally intense and emotionally driven Eddie Vedder's songwriting is. And maybe if you're just listening to this album casually, you might overlook that on the first few songs. You might just be so swept up by the charisma and swagger of it all. But when you get to Black, it becomes completely impossible to overlook how heart-rending this music is. And immediately it makes you take a deeper interest in diving into Vedder's writing, which is incredibly poetic here. Sheets of empty canvas, untouched sheets of clay were laid spread out before me as her body once did. All 5 horizons revolved around her soul as the earth to the sun. Now the air I tasted and breathed has taken a turn, and all I taught her was everything. I know she gave me all that she wore. Yeah.
Oh,
it's actually like, it's kind of fucking emo when I really sit down and read these lyrics. Like, I take a walk
yeah,
out.
but so is Robert Frost.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's not a diss at all. It's like
all the pictures have all been washed in black as a Cure lyric.
Yeah.
My gosh. Yeah. I've listened to this song a number of times. I've only ever been able to read through the lyrics once, because if I try, I am going to collapse. This song is too much. Just Vedder's vocal melodies alone get across every emotion, everything he's going for. It's so fucking gorgeous. I mean, this song rips me apart in a way few songs can and have ever. I just adore it, quite honestly. It's almost a song I feel I have to skip, because if I don't, I'm not going to be able to finish it. It's too much.
It's almost like what does it for me even more than the lyrics is just the outro of it. Like, the fucking drum fills are making me cry. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
That's
I'm not even going to do an impression because it would be wrong. It's just so fucking
I'm not saying we should move on, but I just want to point the absolute fucking nerve of these people to put Jeremy right after this. I will see you fuckers in court.
That is like one of
That is an act of terrorism.
Evilest things ever. Yes.
Yeah.
If our viewers don't grasp the weight of what this means for us, it's like we did a 6-hour long podcast on the Twilight Sad, which is just exclusively songs about killing yourself and shit. And Morgan never got that angry one time, and that was the single most even if it was played up, I saw a whiteness in your eyes that I was just like, oh God, I hope he's okay behind that pain etched in his. By the way, I won't part of me wants to try. But the outro, yes, instrumental, but the final few lines of this song, fuck you, man. Jesus Christ, I can't read it. I would weep.
I'm sure every person who's watching this video doesn't need us to remind them anyway, but yes.
I think you get the goddamn point.
Yeah. All right. So Jeremy then. The first
double decker.
I'm sure this is true for a lot of people. This was the first Pearl Jam song I ever heard. I remember it very distinctly, and it was definitely in association with the video. Incidentally, worth pointing out, the version of this song in the music video is slightly different to the version on the album, very slightly, and more to do with Eddie Vedder's vocalizations in the second half of the song. But it's just a little detail I recommend. If you haven't watched the video, incidentally, or if you haven't seen it in many years, 100% go back and watch it. It's astounding, and one of the most important music videos in terms of its impact and what it did for the band of any music song in the whole 90s. And it's also worth noting that it is based on a true story as well. It's based on two distinct different true stories that are kind of amalgamated together, and essentially to tell the story of this child, this teenager who snaps and I think kills himself. I don't know specifically if that's the actual
he kills himself in front of his class.
That's right. Yeah, I thought so, but I wasn't sure of the exact specifics. But yeah, it's what's beautiful about it is that that's never even remotely specified in the song. Nope. The chorus is Jeremy spoke in class today, which is just a great way of communicating something devastating that has happened through words that don't in themselves suggest devastation, but in their context of what the song is surrounded by, you immediately are able to infer from the lines Jeremy spoke in class today that something horrible has happened, even though those words don't suggest anything bad. It's this idea of this person who is so withdrawn into their world and so suffering so much pain that the mere act of them speaking or hearing that they have spoken immediately tells you that something awful has happened because they have opened up. And I love as well this the storytelling in the song is this. It's almost got this I don't want to say unreliable narrator feel, but it's very much this first person narrator style that it has of this person who admits that he's intimately involved with the person or the situation.
Yeah, they bullied him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Clearly, I remember picking on the boy. Seemed to
it's from the perspective. Little fuck. It's from the perspective of someone who feels culpable for it.
Yeah,
yeah,
which is bone chilling.
Yeah, I mean,
this, and the song itself sounds evil. There's just something deeply wrong with it.
Yeah.
And part of that may be the fact that this is what introduced me to the concept of suicide when I was 8.
Oh man.
Which was part of the fucking look in my eyes when I said I'll see you in court. Harnessing some of that energy, because that caused a couple sleepless nights.
We unleash the lion. Gnash his teeth and bit the recess lady's breast. How could I forget?
I'm gonna ask you to stop right now.
And he hit me with a surprise left.
Oh, the whole vocal delivery of that
Ugh.
whole verse is just my favorite thing in the entire world.
But again,
I love the end where she's like,
yeah, again, the fucking outro, man. Like
that
they made it.
scream at the end where
They
she's
made
like,
it.
"Whoa."
That combined with the fucking tambourine intro, they made a tambourine emotionally tangible.
Also, just worth shouting out. We kind of overlooked it, but the intro to this song is so simple but so like iconic. That little bass line and a ding dong is just like, as soon as I hear that, maybe it's just the memories I've associated with it, but as soon as that comes in, it's like just this transportative thing.
Nobody else uses nobody else uses an 8-string bass, and so that's definitely a huge part of it.
Yeah. It's like I don't think I realized as a kid that it was a bass that was even making that.
Yeah, I
Like,
didn't think so.
Yeah, but like now when you say it's an 8-string bass, you can totally you can hear that sound of that kind of thickness that it has. It's so like ugh. But yeah, this is probably my favorite of the singles on this album. And obviously one of the most significant, but I just one of those songs that left like with Morgan, left a profound impression on me as a child and hasn't lost an ounce of that impact even when I hear it today.
Like at this point, fucking thank God for Oceans. Like,
oh, Oceans is a fucking oasis on this album. Like,
yeah.
Up until Oceans, the album is like in danger. It's like using its instrumentation to tempt you in like a siren song, and its lyrics are like actively trying to get you to stop listening to it because it's too much.
Yeah. And
I mean, it feels like at this point in the album, it's threatening to break apart.
Yeah.
And instead of continuing that, they wisely shift to the most serene thing in rock music in the 90s.
It's tender, it's beautiful, it's a love song, it's uncomplicated. It's got a very simple but straightforward ocean metaphor that nonetheless has a real profound impact. Particularly when he gets to that line of "Please stand by the shore, I'll be there once more," and that vocalization at the end of the song where he's just like, I can't even hit that.
He does
tone.
crooning on this track that is just heart meltingly beautiful. It's just like, it sounds like Jeff Buckley.
Oh man,
whole song actually sounds like Jeff Buckley now that I think about it.
Like
very Lilac Wine.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Unreal.
Just a nice, like, just basically making a song without structure hardly. It's just kind of verse after verse, line after line, kind of flowing into itself. And I think that's such a nice way to come down from what are pretty tightly structured and formed songs before this and well after this, and just giving you this nice kind of breeze in the middle. It's a really great take.
Although there's also a sense of like demented fucking dark sense of humor, because then it's followed by Porch, which is a song about a breakup.
What the fuck is this? Well,
running
to you, did leave a message list? Curl on your voice one last time.
It's like
me time by yours.
Would
you hit me? Would you hit me?
Like, think about this for a second. Oceans is the song like I will wait by the shore for you, and like this beautiful song of devotional love. And then as soon as Porch comes in, it's like he's been left by this person. He's just alone again.
You thought it was a break? Guess what, bitch? It's the shortest song on the album. Fuck you.
Yeah. I admittedly don't have as much of an emotional attachment to this song. It's probably one of my least favorites on the record, but it's still a really, really good song. And I enjoy that twisted sense of like pulling you back into the darkness that is then built on with, spoiler alert, my favorite deep cut on this album coming up next.
Yes.
But
yes, sir.
But yeah, so Porch I think I value for its placement in that regard, even if it's not a song that resonates with me a whole heap.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, here's what I'll tell you about it is that it's comfortably my second least favorite on the album. And I just sang you the first verse verbatim without hesitation.
Whenever I think of this song, I just think of like the many years being like a teenager and like cycling through my music on shuffle and always like all of a sudden hearing what the fuck every time we go past the song.
There ain't gonna be any middle anymore.
And just being like, oh yeah, this is the What the Fuck's Pro Jam song. That's right.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. I'm probably underselling it actually.
Got a sexy ass guitar solo halfway
Yes.
through it.
Oh, I
Some
mean-
Stevie Ray Vaughan shit.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's good. It's real good.
Conjuring the spirit of fucking Hendrix.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's also
Oh yeah.
I think it's also like from what I can gather as well, it's like one of those songs that's used as an excuse when they play it live to just kind of go absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
Like that famous the famous clip of Eddie Vedder at Lollapalooza in '92, which we will have seen on the Pearl Jam 20 documentary,
Yeah.
where he's kind of climbing up onto the scaffolding and just sort of
Mhm.
like swinging from it, is when they're playing this song, I think. So yeah, it's great for that reason.
Yeah, it's a nice little moment like that. It is also far from my favorite thing on here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe even my least favorite song on here. Just it is hard to kind of come down from everything that's followed. I feel everything that's come before in this
Mhm.
album.
Yeah.
And-
That I
and
understand completely.
And I think that is a bit of a broader structural, almost unintentional structural issue I have with 10, where it is almost too good at points where the album feels like it runs out of ways to one up itself.
Perhaps.
This is how you know an album is good, is when August's most prominent complaint is parts of this album are too good.
Perhaps.
Hell yeah.
And yet
Garden.
Garden, which is again, we still haven't
Ooh.
gotten to my favorite song on this record yet, which is probably going to become readily apparent because we don't have many left. But Garden is absolutely top 3 for me. It is this. I mean, ever since I first heard this album as a teenager, this is a song that always stood out to me. Just the absolute, like, again, emo is not the right word, but it is a kind of overwrought emotional intensity to this song that not every singer could sell, but Eddie absolutely can. It is a song about grieving. Like, a garden of stone is obviously a cemetery, and it is a song about existing in the wake of a horrific grief and bearing that like fucking Jesus carrying the cross. I love how overwrought that chorus is of like, I will walk with my hands bound. And my favorite detail of like the second line, I will walk with my face blood. Like, he can't even like string it into a line that's grammatically correct. It's just like, I will walk with my face blood, and it works because of what he brings to it. And the shadow flag as well, this kind of like reminder of death kind of hanging over you and carrying it along with you. But also, like, when he says, I won't be taken yet, this desire to remain as well. And it almost feels like when he says, I don't show, I don't share, I don't need what you have to give, he's talking to death itself. And
I love when he says, I don't need. Oh,
yeah,
so fucking good.
Yeah, it's
Just
just
that
unreal.
like, I would kind of call it a bridge, but the part where it just like,
Oh yes. I don't need. Yeah.
That's the stuff.
That's a really great kind of doomy riff that happens at that
Yeah.
part. I love that shit.
Yeah.
They got the slow solo at the end where it's just kind of like, but it's like you just kind of hear it echo into space, and you're just like, yeah, take me. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go now.
That's actually one of my favorite solos on the album, and it's like a total of 4 notes.
Yeah, right.
McCready the God.
Which again shows you one thing, which is that like technicality comes not necessarily from how many notes are played, but like how they're texturally played and like how they sound. And you can wring a lot out of a little and still have it feel quite technically impressive. And McCready is a god at that.
Yeah.
So then we go into Deep, the
Oh,
positive track.
the beginning of this song is so good. Fuck.
What are
Yeah,
you?
I had a phase for a while where I was like, this is the only track on here that's kind of, it's good, but I'm kind of not in my bag for it the way I am for literally every other song on here. And to an extent, that's true still, but also I turn it on and I'm just like, in too deep, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
100% yes.
I
it is too good.
not sure how you guys interpret this song. Like, I'm almost tempted to interpret it as a song about heroin addiction based on the sinking the needle deep line. But that
Oh
also,
my god, I love that fucking he sinks the burning knife deep.
yeah, like there's that refrain of sinking deep with regard to certain things and himself. And I don't know, it's almost, maybe it's just like a song about depression rather than addiction or any specific kind of like harm. It's a song about like being in too deep such that you can't touch the bottom, like out of control. And that's a moving sentiment. Again, lyrics in the song are great. This is probably my least favorite on the record, but I cannot take away from the lyricism here. It's really stellar.
Yeah, I mean, and the playing and everything, just the pure skill of it is as
One of Eddie's
top
best vocal
notch.
performances on this song, IMO. Honestly, he just like the whole range. He uses everything, and it's all fantastic.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
All right, then.
Another
Well,
song where deep is yet another song where just the charisma, it's just so good. It just sells this track. I love the refrain of I love the needle deep refrain across this song. I think that part kicks ass. It hypes you up and you're like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, I want to kill myself. Good song.
Dan
Poster
Burn voice
in the
I am
bathtub.
going to kill myself.
Play digital bath. Let's
I'm
go.
going to do it.
All right. And so
Oh boy.
that brings us to, I don't know if this is my favorite Pearl Jam song. I feel like that changes every time I listen to my favorite Pearl Jam songs. But Release it's fucking transcendental to me. And it's like, it's interesting as well because I feel like this is the song that I didn't really fully love until I really knew Pearl Jam and knew Eddie and kind of came back to this album with being a fan for a long time and just allowing myself to purely soak in the power of the sheer emotion in this song. And obviously it brings a big theme of the record full circle, which is Eddie's relationship with his father or lack of relationship with his father. This is a spine tingling song. I mean, everything that was said about Black in terms of the emotionality, I think I would apply to this. I think this is even more emotionally intense for me than Black because I just find the sentiment here with regard to like, Dad, can you see me now? I'm myself like you somehow. I'll ride the wave where it takes me. I'll hold the pain, release me. Like this really complicated set of emotions of like not really knowing your dad and yet missing him and yet feeling these complicated sets of emotions of just being overwhelmed and wanting to be free of that. Like I can't even really interpret this song in a coherent way. And I feel like that's kind of part of the point as well, because there's a certain extent to which Eddie just
hasn't figured it out himself.
Yeah, and stops being coherent at a certain point and just, again, that thing where he just kind of vocalizes, where he just kind of lets it out. And it's so powerful. It's so intense and impactful. And words fail me, much like they fail Eddie. And it's one of those moments that feels so transcendentally Pearl Jam and everything that makes them amazing musically and that makes Eddie astonishing as a performer and a presence.
I'm not gonna lie or anything. As somebody who has a complicated relationship with his father, this song is it feels like cheating. I mean, just the I'll hold the pain line, and then the sort of plea of release me. It's like you don't know if he's asking his father or God. Maybe he's asking both. Maybe he's asking neither. I don't fucking know. This is a song that it's like, unlike the rest of the album, it's a little bit more obtuse in how you interpret it, but I think that's mostly to the song's strength rather than its detriment. And it's a very, very, very cathartic song. Like, it's a song that makes me it just it's like a reconciliation but without absolution. It's like looking in the mirror and seeing and being forced to confront the fact that you've changed or that something about you has irreversibly altered, and kind of accepting that, not that it's okay, but that you can move on despite not feeling okay about it. There's so many loose emotional threads in this song that feel like if you tug at them, everything is going to fall apart. And it's just sort of like, you just kind of walk away from the end of the song just feeling like, I don't really know how to feel. Like, whenever I finish this album, I'm always kind of flabbergasted as to like what mood I'm in or how I feel. I'm like, sometimes I'll be like, whew, that was something. Sometimes I'm like, I feel affirmed, and sometimes I'm like, I want to jump in my closet and grab a belt. And it just kind of depends. It's a fantastic fucking song. I don't know if it's my favorite Pearl Jam song, but it's definitely my favorite on this album. So
Yeah, it's just this elemental simplicity that it has above any other song on the record that ultimately really rings home for me. Like, it's a song about, the silence of the dead, essentially, like you reaching out for answers and knowing you won't be able to get them, and not
Yeah.
even knowing what answers you want or what answers you would get anyway, because the person you desperately want answers from is a person you don't even know but lived your life thinking you knew. It's this incredibly complex emotional state, and it ultimately just boils down to a howl of grief and pain and yeah.
I'll wait up in the dark for you to speak to
Yeah.
me.
mm,
That's it. That's the juice.
Just good shit. I love this song. It's just instrumental because it always evokes the sound. It always evokes like this mental image for me of like a sun rising. Is what
yeah.
I picture mentally, that
Mm.
droning sound. That droning, I think it's like a kind of droning bassy sound with the twinkling guitar part in the background. I just love that. It sounds so like it's like Jake says, where you can almost take away anything you want from it emotionally at any given time. Just that it's this great mixture of ambiguity and specificity,
Mm.
having to both the joy of surviving to the next day and like the pain of having to face another day is what I get from it, at both separately and at once.
A beautiful detail of the song that I didn't know until recently is that it's almost entirely improvised.
Yeah, it
They
just came out at jam sessions.
Yeah,
Holy
and
shit.
like I'll quote Eddie himself. On release, everyone plugged in their guitars and started this kind of tinkling, and then I started humming, moaning, or whatever, and then all of a sudden it was like a 6-minute song that totally rolled and peaked. Those words, I still refuse to write them down, even if they need them for publishing. I won't ever write them down. That was just something I hadn't experienced. It was so intense, and to this day, even when the Pearl Jam 10 guitar book was released, there were no lyrics printed for this song. So yeah, it's such an intensely personal and just like organic and unplanned just unraveling of feeling from Eddie, that it felt like something fixed in time that could never be
I feel like
recaptured beyond that.
elemental, like you said, is really the best word for it.
Yeah. And yet, despite that importance of this recording, if you ever watch a recording of them playing this live, they still somehow managed to exceed it. It's an incredible thing to watch. Pearl Jam I never seen them live. Maybe I pray for the day, but even from the recordings I've seen online, they are one of the most sensational live bands ever. I don't think, without exception, there's ever a song that they've ever recorded on a studio album that doesn't sound better when they play it live, from what I've heard and from what I can gather anyway. So, I mean, there you go. This album is this beautiful little emblem of Pearl Jam that is also just such a small part of the wider picture of what makes them great as well. And us spending this much time detailing it is, it just shows you how all that there is to appreciate is so vast that we've just scratched the surface. So yeah.
Hell yeah.
Gigantic moment for grunge, for this incredible movement forward, even if its rise to the prominence in the popular culture came later. Its role and its timing, particularly with relation to that Temple of the Dog album as well, is incredibly important, and it's absolutely still 100% a 1991 record through and through, hence why we're discussing it here. And I'm no doubt that by the time it comes to the end of this retrospective, when we reflect on the best and most lasting albums of this whole thing, that this will be high up on the list.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we do our favorite tracks and ratings?
Yeah.
All right. Jake, why don't you let us off?
My 3 favorite tracks are Black, Release, and Why Go. My least favorite track is probably Alive. It's an 8 out of 10. Don't fucking look at me. The album itself, I'm going to give a hard 9. Best album we've covered for this retrospective. Heyo.
All right.
I'll give you a hard 9, Boyle.
Yes, do it.
Yeah, I'd have to take that up with your lady first, but it'll happen.
Favorite songs of mine are Black, Jeremy, and Release. Least favorite is Garden. I'd give it an 8.
My favorites, yes. My least favorites, no. Name of the album.
Oh yeah, I was waiting to see if you would do that.
I couldn't even craft a joke around it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Saoirse has given it a 9. My 3 favorite tracks are Release, Jeremy, and Garden. Fucking crazy that Black didn't make it in there. Least favorite is probably Deep. Yeah. This is I'm going to give this a 9.5 actually, which brings us to an average.
This hurts me. Only 110 for 10.
Brett, this brings it to a 9.1 average, which is
same as Third Eye Blind.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments below what 10 means to you, what your favorite songs on 10 are. And if you have anything to add to our discussion, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear takes on the records that we review. So please let us know in the comments below. If this is not your favorite Pearl Jam record, what is? Any kind of take you want to share with us, we want to know. Next week in the retrospective, we're going to be reviewing Talk's Laughing Stock, which is going to be
up with the trend of happiness.
Yeah, which is going to be like, I mean, Jesus, I don't even know how I'm going to do that. Well, that's going to be some fun. But yeah, make sure you go and check out the other videos we've already put out this week. A couple of days ago, we put out a special record club on 9 Inch Nails' fantastic concept record, Year Zero. And we also reviewed 2 new releases this week, the new album from Lord and the new album from Deaf Heaven. So make sure you go and check out that video as well. As Jake alluded to at the top of this video, this is a sequel to our Temple of the Dog video, the last album in our retrospective, which is linked also in the description, along with the playlist to check out all the other videos in our 1991 retrospective so far. We've already reviewed Slint Spiderland, Massive Attack's Blue Lines, REM's Out of Time, De La Soul is Dead, Smashing Pumpkins Gish, and we have plenty more classics to come. They will be dominating the next, I think, 8 to 10 weeks of our Thursday releases. So stick around for those.
As always, everyone, rock over London, rock on Chicago, NBA. This is why we play.